Well, how have you enjoyed the series so far, Practicing the Way? I know for me, this series, it's really shifted my perspective, and it's why I brought it to Kim and Mark to say, I think our church needs to go on this journey. Go back to the foundations, not necessarily something new, but just go back and look at the rhythms of Jesus. And this particular week, we're looking at the rhythms and over his life of the fact that Jesus was so good at doing life together. It's about community. And when we focus on Practicing the Way, some of our life groups will be doing it this week. He looked at the 4 different layers of community that Jesus was actually in. So if you look on the screen, these are the 4. The first is tribe, then it's village, friends, and then intimate. And so if we start with tribe, the largest circle out there, this is the group, and it's kind of, when you look at it, it's where your purpose comes from. So for us, it's in the church, and we're talking about the wider church. And sometimes it could be the Salvation Army, but it's bigger than us. It's the wider church. For others, it might be a company. It might be a football club or something. It's something that gives you purpose. You won't know everyone in this group personally. And when you look at Jesus' life, the Acts 2 church, so what he left behind, that's the tribe in its structure. So that's the first part there, the tribe. Then it's the village. And so for us, it's Sundays. And we love the fact as a village, like today, we get to celebrate Madden, and we do life together. It's they talk about, in the science of it, it's around 150 people. That's the kind of village mentality that 150, you can do life pretty well with them. And they talk about, in the book this week, about the fact that that's what the local church kind of sits at, that 150 kind of mark, because of the connection points, and that's how it works there. But it also could be about a sporting club. It could be about you following a certain football team or being a part of that. It could be the company you work for. But it's the people you often do life with, but it's the big crowd, the village. And here in Mark 2, you see that. You see the fact that Jesus, in his life, would go from crowd experiences or the larger tribe experiences throughout his walk. There would be consistency in that, where he would be in big groups. But then what you find in Mark 2 as well, that he sits down and he loves to live at the table with others in those smaller groups. And so when you flip, we've got the intimate and then the friends. And this is the section they talk about where spiritual formation, practicing the way, actually takes place. Where the great thing is Sundays and the village, but it's these experiences with others that really shift your formation. And so friends, what this is, about 15 or so people in your life, these are the people you do life with all the time. You're hanging out for dinners, you're inviting them to parties, they're the people you call when the good and the bad happens in your life, but you are consistently walking in them. Some of you might have different circles of friends as well. So some, it's the 15 that are about your spiritual formation, and others about certain life. But this particular thing is looking at who is forming you. Who are the people around you in your circles? And so for Jesus, it was his disciples. He had his 12. There was Mary, Martha, and a few others that came along with him on the journey, and they got to experience him firsthand. They would walk with him, have meals with him, be with him constantly. And then we get to the intimates. So Peter, James, and John, the 3, they were his closest friends. He brought them into certain situations in his life where he wanted to reveal different things to everyone else he had been in touch with. Way different from the crowd or the tribe mentality or the village. Different again from the 12. These were the people he wanted to experience all. And for us, it's our close people. It's the people that we do life all the time with. Like, they really, truly know us. And so that's where the intimates come into place. And what I love about Mark 2, when he calls Levi, and it's Matthew in other translations, he's inviting them into community. When it's saying, Levi, Matthew, come follow me, he's not saying just come be one of my disciples and you and I will hang out. He's inviting him into community to do life together. And that's the invitation. We started our series in this, come follow me. And it's the invitation again for you to come and follow him in community. We are designed to do life together. But it's spiritual formation, it's got to take place in these smaller groups. And so our Sundays as the village is really important. There's, like I said before, there's such strength in us coming together, celebrating, worshiping together, hearing from the word, having conversations over morning tea. It is brilliant. But I don't know about you, but I truly believe it's in those smaller groups where formation truly takes place. You cannot follow Jesus alone. And spiritual formation, it's a relational process. It said it in the book this week, a relational process. It's the iron sharpens iron, you being around other people to talk about it. And the reason, it's going to come on the screen, they talk about 3 different ideas. The first, and it's why it's different to Sundays or the village versus a small group. One is there's depth. You're not just talking about the weather and how horrible and it's wet today. You're talking about real life stuff, the stuff that really matters. You're having God conversations constantly. The other shift is there's going to be vulnerability. You will share about the great, you will live and celebrate that together in the joys of life, but you will sit in the sucky as well. You will open up honestly and openly about what is going on in your life. And this third idea is this commitment to transformation. You aren't just in the group to get fit, or you aren't just in this group because you love the Roosters or whatever the thing is. You're in it because you want to see a life transformed, your own and others. And in Mark 2, there's this verse 17 that Charlotte read, where there's this wrestle with the Pharisees and Jesus. They were saying, Jesus, why are you sitting down with these sinners? And they were classing these sinners because they weren't following the law. Yeah, I'm sure they had a past and everything. Matthew had his own story as a tax collector. But the Pharisees, they were concerned about the law. They're like, you can't do that. You can't sit with these people. It's not right. But Jesus, in his line, in terms of thinking about a sinner, I love the line this week. I was like, you've got to think of sinners. They're simply alienated from a life of God. They haven't experienced it yet. That's the difference. These people, and the difference between the Pharisees and then the sinners, as they classed them, was the Pharisees just had a hardened heart. They were actually focused on the law, not actually seeing that Jesus, the Messiah, was standing in front of them. They were too concerned about the religion that was a part of their life. And so you can see in verse 17, and there's a little question about the fact that, does Jesus actually care about the Pharisees? He does. The issue is actually on the Pharisees themselves. They're closed off. They don't want to hear anything that Jesus has to say. Again, they go back to the law. But Matthew, or Levi, and all his other friends that sit around that table, the sinners, they are open and they understand that there is something else out there and they want it. They are committed to transformation. And that was the difference in this group, in this situation. And so our groups, and for our church, it's our life groups, and they come in different forms. Some people just catch up for coffee, 2 people. Some of us in groups of 4, others bigger groups. But it's all a commitment to transformation, being vulnerable, and having deep conversations. And so this first part of today is asking you, who or what is your circle of influence in your life? Who is around you, and particularly who is around you in your friendship groups and your intimate groups to help you in your spiritual formation? I just want to encourage you, maybe it's in a life group, but also there's different aspects in your life where there's a natural pathway. So some of you might be already catching up for coffee with somebody, and you talk about life, but you feel prompted, that's got to shift into something about God instead. So I just want to take 30 seconds for you, as I just speak here, or maybe it's been on your heart for a while and this is the prompt to action something. Who is God placing on your heart? Do you need to jump in a group that's based around a Bible study and really get deep into the Word? Is it one where, and we have lots of groups around marriage and other aspects of our life that's seasonal, in terms of really going deep and thinking, how do I have a godly marriage? Spending quality time in there so your marriage is last a long and healthy way and it's centered on Jesus. What does that look like for you? And the other thing I love about this church is we are generational. And I think more and more we need to be looking around and going, who else can I invest into? It goes both ways. You're looking, who's out there that I could ask for some guidance and feedback in terms of my spiritual formation? And on the flip side, who can I do that for others? So take 30 seconds. Maybe it's sending a text to somebody right now, hey, do you want to catch up on Tuesday? I'd love to just talk about something. Maybe it's put a note in your diary, call me tomorrow, and we can figure out a life group. But take 30 seconds. What is God stirring into you about your group? Particularly the intimate and those friendship circles. Who Who do you need to reach out to this week? I'll leave it there for 30 seconds. And so for this series, that was it. That was the last kind of thought in terms of when we do think about all these different practices, and even one of the quotes I had this week by Guy Henry Newman, he said, when you look at the rhythms of Jesus, one thing would be there'd be solitude, so sitting in the practices that we've been looking at, Sabbath, Scripture, prayer, and the list goes on. The next would be community, like we're talking about today, doing life together. It's designed to do it together. And then thirdly, this idea of going out in community. And I was really wrestling, because I could end it there and say, yep, go out, get in a life group, invest in others. But I think there's a thing we've got to wrestle with. And Lauren Soper, she sent me a text this week that hit exactly the thought that God was placing on my heart. And these are the words that it said. But what is spiritual formation? In practicing the way, following Jesus' example, it's really easy for us to just focus on the practices of our formation, okay, to focus on those practices. But we are missing the point. Our formation is actually for the sake of others. The goal of spiritual formation isn't to be a more balanced person or maintain status or have personal peace or improve our character. They will all come and they are great, but it is to become something of love for the sake of others. Your spiritual formation, yes, you yourself will be transformed, but that transformation has to go out into an outward focus for the sake of others and shift into that life of solitude, community, and then witness. And I was flicking through the Practicing the Way book thinking, I swear they had something about this in there, and they did. And it landed on these next three ideas. 1, we need to make space for the gospel. 2, we need to preach it. And 3rd, we need to demonstrate it. So I just want to unpack a few of these ideas there. So make space. Mark 2, at the very start, it says, once again. It tells you that in Jesus' life, his rhythm, he was constantly doing these things. So he was either out in the crowd, village, tribe, or he was sitting around a table with people. It was a constant habit. He was making space for the gospel continuously. And what you'd see in Jesus' life, he'd be walking side by side with them. If you're talking about the disciples going from place to place. And in one of the readings this week, it talked about he was either going to a meal, at a meal, or coming from a meal. There's this cycle of Jesus about meals. I was like, I reckon the Salvos can get on board with this because we're very good. And I was thinking, we're very good at hospitality. It's not quality food, but it's sausages on, and you never go hungry, but it's good. It's good. So, but when you think of the gift of hospitality, it's one way we can make space for the gospel. We all eat every single day. And I love this idea when they were sitting, and even David and Sandra, they were at Muster a few years ago, and you had this topic that was about, if you can eat, you can be a disciple. And that whole idea, we can all do it. You eat every day. You've just got to look at that as an opportunity. How could you shift it? You think as a family, when you sit around that table, how could a God conversation come upon that table? If you're inviting your mates over, how could a God conversation come upon that table? And they talked about John Mark, who writes this book. He's had his best conversations around a meal. And I totally agree. I think of Jess and I, any time when the kids are in bed and we sit down and actually look at each other and eat our meal together and chat, there's so much fruit from it. And I was at a birthday party, it was Zach's birthday party the other day, and just over a bit of birthday cake, I'm having this quality conversation with one of my mates about God. He brought it up. He was making space for the gospel. And so how can you look at your life and see what are the elements where you can just make space for the gospel? And our meals, hospitality, Salvos love it. You'll never go hungry. We'll help you out. How can we do this? How can we repurpose it? And I think we have to hold it a little lighter about that we are in charge of people's faith. We just have to provide the opportunity. I would love, sometimes I wrestle in ministry, that I could control you all and you do this and this and this, but I can't. It's free will. You get to choose to step into it. My job, your job, is to make space for the gospel and let God do his work. That's the shift. So how can you make space for the gospel? Could it be around the gift of hospitality and meals? That's the first part. The second is preach. And you see here in Mark 2, there's two ways in which Jesus is preaching here. The first is to the crowd, your textbook preach. Your second is around a table. And I think we get lost in that. When anyone talks about preach the gospel, your mind goes to what I'm doing right now, or somebody in the city standing on a soapbox preaching the gospel. Often the soapbox has these negative connotations and everything like that. People have been scarred over time. There's a place for it, and here and there. But in the book this week, he said, the primary problem isn't that we are doing it on the soapbox, Bible bashing, all that kind of stuff. But the issue potentially is that we aren't preaching the gospel at all. It's not that we're coming in and Bible bashing, but we aren't doing it at all. And I think, again, around that table experience, over those dinner tables, we can talk about anything. You can chat to me about why the Warriors beat the Roosters the other night, and that could go on for days. Yeah, Jack and I could talk about it for a long time. Or it could be about what's going on in your family. All those different topics, which are great. They're a part of your life. But why do we have the fear of not chatting about our faith, which is so vital in our lives? What's holding us back? So how can you preach the gospel? And when we think of preaching the gospel, I think, and I love the ideas again in the book, that we've got to look at it different ways. And he goes, a couple of examples. One, what if it is, and it's all about meals today, so get hungry, but what if it is about dropping off a meal to somebody that's your neighbour? And you, as a church, you do that so well. Just asking the mums and dads who've had kids over the last year. And you do it to the public too. So could it look like you cooking a meal, going over to your neighbour and say, I just want to bless you? Could it be a phone call or a text that God's placed somebody in your heart and you follow that prompt? And you follow them and say, hey, whatever God's saying to you, you actually speak it out over their life as a form of prophecy, but just a form of encouragement. It could be through an act of service. Letting somebody else in the line at the grocery store, whatever it might be. The little things to help people understand the gospel. And the other is the invite culture. Inviting them into Bible study, inviting them to church, Easter's coming, inviting them into something different, or the invite into your house over a meal. Maybe that's where preaching the gospel take place. And I love our young adults. I'm very fortunate I get to hang out every Monday night and do our life group Bible study together. One of the best things I love is often we're sitting in this corner here, we make a circle, the circle keeps getting bigger, but often I rock up and somebody random sitting in the room. I'm like, how did this happen? And Chris is a great example of that. He's down front. Sorry, Chris. Welcome to church. But I remember first time Chris came with his grandpa, Mark's like, oh, there's a young girl in the building, Joel. You've got to go say hello. And so I went up, hey, Chris, nice to meet you. Left it at that. But what happened is our young adults, probably not text, but they probably got your DM in their Instagram or something like that, yep. So on Instagram, told him, hey, mate, Monday night, we have Bible study. Do you want to come along? And now Chris is a part of our church. All because of an invite. Small thing. So as Harry, Dylan, a few others there, just that invite, and it's changed Chris's life, and he's now part of our community. Same with another girl called Sophie, who comes Sundays, and she's a girl at a works at Sports Girl, and just invited her to Monday nights. And she is slowly understanding who this Jesus guy, because Sophie felt led to invite her to something. It's powerful, young adults. Keep it up. It's nothing to do with me, by the way. It's all them. And our job, again, we can't hold the responsibility for people getting saved, but we can make space for the gospel and preach it, share a story. And it doesn't have to look like this. There's another story. Stu Sims, we're always chatting, and if you haven't tried, he's not here today, but I'll let him know that I said something about him. But we're often talking about his faith, and he goes, Joel, I'm not a textbook Christian. And I don't know what a textbook Christian is, but it could be Ned Flanders on The Simpsons. It could be the guy on the soapbox. But the negative or the not norm and true of what a Christian truly is. It's the perception that the world has of us, of disciples, of people who are practicing the way. But then I asked you, well, mate, what goes on in your work? When things all go wrong in people's lives, who do they turn to? They turn to Stu. Stu sins because, one, he's deep. If you ever have a chat to him, he's a guy that loves a good quality conversation. He doesn't want to talk about the weather. He wants to talk about real life. He's also vulnerable. He will tell you when life is hard and how his mates are doing and all that kind of stuff. He's not mucking around, and he wants to see a commitment to transformation. He's preaching the gospel, just not like we think normally. I just want to honor people like Stu, and there's so many in this room that do that. So how can you preach the gospel in your world? And finally, it's demonstrating the gospel. And again, you go from, and I like the lines in the book this week, you preach it, but you got to embody it, live it out. And somebody, there was I forget if it was in the book or somewhere else, where he came to church one day, and he comes into the Sunday service, but he's like, when do we get to do the stuff? When do we actually get to go out and do and be like Jesus? And even there's a scripture, Peter 2:12, that's this encouragement to believers to live honourable lives among non-believers, so that even though they might falsely accuse you, your good deeds would lead others to glorify God. That you would live in such a way that somebody would ask more questions about your faith. And again, in Mark 2, Jesus is doing it. He's just sitting around a table where the society is saying, you can't do that, Jesus. The Pharisees, you can't sit with these people. And he's like, no, I need to be. They are open to this. They are committed to transformation. And I will sit in this table with them and show them love. He was demonstrating love to them. And the other great thing about Jesus, he was always looking for opportunity. This invite for Matthew or Levi to come and follow him was an opportunity. I don't know the plans of what Jesus was on about on that day, if he just randomly saw him go, yep, you're my guy, or he knew it already and he was taking the disciples a certain track, but he was making space for it. He was looking for opportunity to make that happen. And for us, I think, and again in the book it said this week, we need to just take a breath and look for those opportunities where God's at work and then step in with him. That's God's part. And we just have to be his vessel. And this week, we had our Shire Salvos lunch. So anyone that works for the Salvos, whether that's a Salvo store, whether it's here in our team Menai down in Heathcote, the Village Cafe, anyone that works, has the brand of Salvos on their door, comes and has lunch. It was one of the best lunches, again, over a meal, where there was a point where Mark asked one person to share, and it was just dominoes. And everyone's sharing different stories and all coming back to God. Like, it was a really powerful conversation. And then Nat took the moment to just say a story about Heathcote and James and Shez, who were there. And Nat shared, Jared and Nat's uncle, or auntie, lives down in Heathcote. And she's like, oh, I'm there every day. They're such nice people. I'm just hanging out. And she pops up and back and forth and all that. And she was saying the story of, she has this massive tree in her backyard. And she was so nervous that that might fall over. It just looked really strange to thinking, oh, this could come down on my house. And so she was so stressed. And so like she's normally done the past few days, she goes up to Heathcote and she's just chatting with people. And she shares this story about a tree that she's really nervous, could fall down. What does she do? And one of the other volunteers, and I don't know if it was him or the other volunteers, pops up and says, oh, I do that, or my mate does that, or I know a guy. And that next week, they're there checking out this tree to make sure that it's okay, taking that stress away from her and just fixing it. All because she felt like she was in a community where there was deep conversation, people were vulnerable. She felt like it was okay to turn up there and just talk about the stress about this big tree falling on her house. And the space is seeing a commitment to transformation. And so she was sharing with Nat and Jared how great the story, the tree's getting solved, all that kind of stuff. But then she said to them, I don't really believe in this Jesus guy, but if Jesus looks like these people, I think I want to know him a little more. because they were just making space for the gospel. They were preaching it. It was about a tree. It wasn't textbook. And they were demonstrating it. So much love in that place of Heathcote. And you can see there that God continues to place opportunities in our life for us to step into and join him, partner him in with sharing the gospel. So today it's that challenge of, well, yes, we do need to be in small groups and do life together and be transformed, but we need to do it, our spiritual formation. We practice the way for the sake of others. That's what we're designed to do. So how do you make space for the gospel? How do you preach it? And how are you going to demonstrate it in your life? And when you look over your life and your own formation, it is people. People are often that example of Jesus, and they are the ones that helped you and spurred you on. So I just want to encourage you could be that for somebody else. If you continue to pray about it, be open to it, and look for those opportunities. So we're going to just finish in prayer. I want to invite you to stand, and I'll close, but I just want to have a few of you just pray into this over our church, really believing that yes, we as a church, we will continue to be transformed, but for the sake of others, and that we would have prompts of different people on our mind to invite to certain things, or for us to be more open to the different aspects where we can share and make space for the gospel. So just leave it open, and then I'll wrap up.